unconventional things on his mind.
We shall overcome. Yes, we can.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV.
What the f*** is wrong with you?
Welcome to the What Franklin Show. I'm Chip Franklin. That's where the name came. It's good to have you here. Man, there's a lot to talk about. But coming up on the show a little bit later on, we're going to speak to a director who has put together a film called The Game Is Up. And it's interesting because what she is saying in this film is that, in fact, that Trump is cooked, that Trump is done. And we're going to talk to people like former Congressman Joe Walsh, who is a big part of this film and just a great, just a great human being for what he's doing. And you'll see that's coming up in just a couple minutes. With us will be David Cay Johnston. He is a journalist and an author. He's also the CEO of the DC Report, dcreport.org, which is a great place to go to get information on what's happening in the world of the Republican Party. And that's a little bit of what's happening today. Also, first time today, we're going to do this. I'm going to try to do it every day, which is the top 10 Twitter terror report, which is just the top 10 worst things on Twitter. Actually, I have a little more than 10. So let me play you one of them that I just love. They're not all hardcore politics. For example, this is a British politician defending a road that was built that others said was not safe.
I will not accept that it's a highly dangerous road. Work is finished. The Central Reserve safety fencing will go ahead.
Yeah. Luckily, no one was hurt in the crash.
I love his face. I love that it looked like how many of you guys ever lived in the UK? It's because I got family in Dublin. And I've never been. It's pathetic. It's sad that I've never been back there. Because I just love their attitude. I love to see the Parliament when they all just take off the gloves and start fighting. It would be fun to see that here. A little bit later, obviously, we'll be talking to our good friends Mark Thompson and Nikki Maduro about their shows, which kick off later today on YouTube. You can find this at What the Franklin. I'd like to ask you right off the top here a couple of things. Number one, please subscribe to this show. It's simple. You just hit that button right up in the corner there that says subscribe, and also hit the bell. You'll see up in the corner a little bell, and that will let you know when we go live. And this is live every day from 9 to 10 Pacific time. And it's different than radio, and there's a lot more challenges here. For example, I'm wearing pants. I'm not going to show you, but take my word. And this is a kind of a unique opportunity for me and for a lot of us. You can also get the audio version of this on iTunes and Spotify. Just say Chip Franklin, What the Franklin, and you'll find it right there. I wanted to show you this because this is Marjorie Taylor Greene. This is what we're dealing with. This is the woman that in some circles say could be right up there with Carrie Lake as Trump's running mate. She tweeted this out the other day. Take a peek at this. So many people still wearing masks. I just want to ask you, if a pair of underwear, really thick ones, high quality cotton, can't protect you from a fart, then how will a mask protect you from COVID? I bring that up not just to show how ridiculous this human being is, but to also add to the latest reports that Elon Musk will not stop the spread of COVID misinformation from everybody from Ted Cruz to Rand Paul and others who are still lying about this. A little personal for me, since my wife is trying to recover from COVID. She's got the beginnings of long COVID. She can't taste or smell. It's been about a week. And we were the most careful people in the world. And somehow living in the same house with her, I did not get it. But it is something that is, from the very beginning, I've had so many different people on here on our shows the last 4 years anyway, trying to figure out exactly, where we are with this. In 2019, at the very end of 2019, we heard reports out of Wuhan, and nobody could imagine that it would be like it is right now. All right. And a lot of that was Trump, with more than 1 million Americans dead. we'll get to that. But right now, I want to bring in our first guest. David Cay Johnston is not only an author and a journalist and the CEO and the managing editor of DCReport.org. He might have the most experience and knowledge about the former president of anybody talking to the public today. And he's nice enough to join us on What the Franklin. David, great to see you, my friend.
Good to see you.
Boy, there's a lot to talk about here today. I mean, since the last time we've spoken, it's been about a year. And let me just ask you right off the top. The Mitch McConnell and others have said that Trump is done. That, you know, we've heard that, right? We've been listening to people on the right. The left has been hoping that for the longest time, but the right. But later on, I'm going to play a clip of Mitch McConnell not saying that he would not support. So the reporter said, "Would you support Trump if he ran for president in 2024?" And he wouldn't say no. Where is the Republican Party right now, David?
Oh, the Republican Party is in really deep trouble, particularly in its inability to get votes from young people. We would have been done with Donald Trump if Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy had stood by their statements of January 7th, denouncing Trump over the insurrection. And if they had taken a firm line with their members and said, you know, to people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, you go do whatever you want to do as a absolute freshman in this body. But those of us who've been around a while, we're done with Donald Trump, and America should be done with Donald Trump. And we have endured almost 2 years more of Trumpian nonsense. And remember, I've known Donald now for 34 years, more coming up on 35 years. And all because the leadership of the Republican Party really doesn't have an ideology other than white domination of the society and lower taxes for the rich. That's really the end of their of what they think about and promote. And they did a very good job of suppressing the white supremacy side for a long, long time, but the last couple of years have made that quite clear that that's always been who they are, and sadly, who they are likely to continue to be.
When we say they, and we talk about the Republican Party, you know, we have people like Liz Cheney, you know, Adam Kinzinger, and Mitt Romney, who I have a quote from a little bit later on in the show, who now is saying, I didn't think he could become any more disgusting, and being the one U.S. senator that voted for removal of office. On the other hand, we have Susan Collins essentially saying that Herschel Walker's okay because he's against abortion, despite the fact that we're finding a trail of women that he helped get abortions. The hypocrisy is it's so astonishingly transparent. One wonders, is the base really? Do they really hate Democrats that much, David? Because I can't think what else this could be.
No, I don't think this is a function of hating Democrats. I mean, Susan Collins is a great example of a politician who has no spine whatsoever. She's a moral jellyfish, and she keeps getting reelected. So clearly the people in Maine prefer her to the other alternatives they've been presented with. And I don't think it's that the Republicans hate the Democrats, although bipartisanship, you know, is no longer seen very much in Washington. There was a joke a few years ago that bipartisanship has been reduced to a Democrat and a Republican sharing a taxi to the airport.
Yeah.
They used to live together.
I remember, David, I know you know this. I saw Orrin Hatch and Ted Kennedy having lunch once at the Palm. Yeah. And you couldn't have more diametrically opposed politicians than those guys. Right. They managed to do it.
Right. And in fact, when Ted Kennedy died, Alan Simpson, who's as authentic a conservative as you'll ever find, praised him at great length, although the Wall Street Journal removed the praising quotes from its article and only quoted Rush Limbaugh dancing on Ted Kennedy's grave. But here's the Republicans' problem is very simple. 50 years ago, in fact, more than that, around 1969-70, the first reports were coming out from political scientists and demographers saying the Republican Party has to change because the demographics of the country are changing. So where you are in California, where I grew up and spent half my life, Anglos are now a minority, and they're a shrinking element of the population. And the Republicans were
for the record, David,
What?
As a Californian and having lived in San Francisco and San Diego and for a short time in LA, I don't, it's so ubiquitous here. I don't even notice it. I mean, on my street, there's about 30 houses on my street. It ends in a cul-de-sac, and about 15 are Asian, and about no, actually, I think more like 18. I only know this because we had a party, this summer, and everybody came down, and we tried to get to know each other. And there are Hispanic. There are not as many African Americans in the north part of San Diego.
You're in the Bay Area, Chip. If you go to the heartland of the country, that's not what your experience will be.
I understand that, yeah.
And that's a really important, that there's a familiarity is crucial to understanding the nature of the country. And people who've grown up in a community where everyone who's gay hides their identity, where the vast majority of people are white and the only people of color they meet are in subordinate positions, they don't have a realistic perspective of what's happening in this country. And keep in mind that Los Angeles County has more people than, I think it's 16 states.
Yeah.
More people there than in Michigan or New Jersey or Ohio. And yet LA County doesn't have that kind of representation in Congress. So our Congress is not representative of who the people in America, and our Supreme Court certainly is not. 6 Catholics on the Supreme Court in a country where two would be representational. But the fundamental problem the Republicans have is that their belief system is slowly eroding as young people grow up. And one of my best friends observed when we were at lunch the other day, I said, the Republicans have got to figure out how to change. And he looked at me, he said, they can't change. This is who they are. And I think that may well be true.
Well, it's pretty obvious that nationally, I mean, they have not won the popular vote in a presidential election but once in the last 32 years.
Right.
And that's I think that reveals a lot. And of course, the Electoral College protects them in national elections, gerrymandering in state elections.
In the House.
State legislatures are, I think by one state, 26 to 24 Republican. I think that's why people were worried about an election going to the House.
Sure.
But let me ask you this. So when I look at Trump and I try to figure out just how much more mischief he can cause, he's still capable of quite a bit, in my opinion. And I'm not convinced that he won't be the nominee for the Republican Party. Joe Walsh, who's going to join us in the second half of this hour, he believes the same. He believes that Donald Trump will be and regardless of what the polls say right now in Iowa and New Hampshire, he will be the Republican nominee for the presidency. And if Joe Biden runs, there's a chance that he can, especially that, even though there's some of the secretaries of state were Democrats in some of the key pivotal states, which could, stop to a certain extent, the stealing of votes. We just saw a story in Wisconsin about a Republican poll guy who was taking votes and putting them on a hard drive, just like the Republicans and Democrats have been doing.
Well, I don't see that outcome at all, Chip. I think there are three.
What's stopping him? What is stopping him? Because right now I still see Laura Ingraham, Tucker Carlson, and Sean Hannity, who command 40 million viewers a week, still singing his praises, not attacking Trump. They'll have DeSantis on, but DeSantis ain't Trump.
DeSantis is a real empty suit. He's right up there with Susan Collins, and Kevin McCarthy is an empty suit. But here's what I think is most likely to happen here. Trump has announced that he's running. So if he gets the nomination, the Democrats should easily be able to defeat him based on the fact that he lost the popular vote twice, and there was a clear rejection of Trumpian craziness on a state level in America in the election we just had this month. Secondly, if Donald doesn't get the nomination, he will almost certainly run as an independent.
Which destroys the Republicans.
Guarantees the Democrats could run anybody and win. Third, if he realizes that he won't get the nomination or doesn't get it, and he's going to look like a loser, a word that Donald hates with a passion, he may tell his followers to boycott. One of the reasons Democrats were able to capture the Pennsylvania governor and senator's office was Republicans stayed home, many of them. So I think those three scenarios I've laid out, if the Democrats are smart about it, benefit them. And you're starting to see Republicans saying to the faces of people like Steve Bannon, this happened on his podcast either today or yesterday, that there was no voter fraud, that this is a myth, that every election you can point to a couple of examples somewhere, although most of the ones we've seen in the last 6 years have been Republicans who were trying to help Trump in the voter frauds. But
Fox and OAN and Newsmax, they still say there's voter fraud. They don't say Dominion machines anymore because they're facing billion-dollar lawsuits.
They don't care about facts or verifiable facts.
I understand, but these people we're talking about, they watch nothing other than these broadcasts. And so if that's what, I mean, again, this is the part that he does again, for the record, there's 5 states that are going to be in the way of a Democrat winning it. And can Trump rally people in those states? Again, he didn't lose by that many votes when you add, the states that allowed for the electoral win for Joe Biden and popular vote. And I just don't feel the confidence that a lot of other people do. I mean, we remember 2016 and incredulity we had at the outcome. We remember that well, right? I mean, you and I had these conversations then. And granted, we know more about him now, but I would also say the country is more dystopian in their approach and their cynicism towards the political system, that these people that we see them show up at Trump rallies by the tens of thousands say the election was stolen.
Let me challenge you on that, Chip.
Okay.
I run this little tiny news organization, DC Report. And
it's a great organization, DCReport.org.
Most of our contributors are past retirement age, New York Times, LA Times, Wall Street Journal, at one time Fox News contributors, senior editors and whatnot. They contribute to us, and they get them a little tiny, check in the mail for work worth a lot more than that. And we sent reporters to 3 Trump rallies. And what they found was that A, the crowds over time were diminishing. They weren't that large. And B, they're the same people. I mean, you can see that in the photographs and the videos where Trump controls the cameras of who sits behind him. You can literally see the same people. There was an old joke when I covered Atlantic City back in the late 80s and early 90s, which is how I met Trump, that, Atlantic City was America's #1 tourist destination with 32 million visitors. Well, actually, it was 2 million people who came on average 16 times each.
Yeah. It's like the lie. It's like the lie from, we remember the lie.
I have been on their cover like 14 or 15 times. I think we have the all-time record in the history of Time magazine.
The audience was the biggest ever, but this crowd was massive. Look how far back it goes.
We remember Spicer. So we remember Spicer. Spicer knew he was lying, right? And I think that shadow is still there. And here, let me make just one point about that, because, and I want to ask you some more about the actual Republican Party and what they stand for. You mentioned race and the problems we're having right now. I think that underneath all this is the idea that Trump, and this is what the evangelicals in Georgia, they held their nose and voted because they wanted abortion rights, and they wanted it in 2016 and they wanted it in 2020. They're still there. Okay. The people that have seen this guy back from the pussy grabbing comment. Okay. They know it. That nothing's changed. All the things that have happened recently, they don't care if Nick Fuentes was at a dinner with him, with Kanye. None of them care. The 70 million people that voted for him. Yeah, sure, some were pocketbook Republicans voting because they hate Democrats and they always assume Democrats are going to raise taxes. Maybe they will. But I don't think that they can differentiate the issues facing this nation, the dire issues facing this country, from just getting rid of Trump.
I agree. I agree with you 100% about that. Look, there are 3 groups of people who Trump got support from, and they overlap. The biggest group is the 90% of Americans who had more income 50 years ago than they do today. In 2020, Trump's last year, that was the first year of the pandemic, 82% of all the increased pay in America, there were people who got pay raises, went to workers already making $1 million a year. And that's only 1 in 900 workers, a tiny, tiny slice. And they got 82% of the pay raises. So the other 167 million workers had to split up 18% of the pay increase money. And guess what? On average, they got 50 cents a week, $26. The newest data for 2021, not quite as bad. The $1 million class only got 30% of all the pay increases in America, leaving 70% for the other 99.998%. So people are legitimately upset about how we have reordered the economy to benefit people who own assets and corporate executives. The second group are the evangelicals who claim to be Christians, but whose own words show that they have no idea what the message of the New Testament is about. Donald Trump has called Christians in a book he wrote, where he went on for 6 pages, fools, idiots, schmucks, and he said his life philosophy is revenge, and he said that in his last year of his presidency. Well, I'm sorry, Christianity rejects revenge. If you don't know that, you're not really a Christian if you claim to be, and I certainly don't claim to be. And then the third group are people who want to have a white-dominated culture. And I don't see any evidence that those people are going to change. The only thing that's going to happen is some people will break away because of the craziness in Trump.
All right.
That's
You watch Fox.
Sliver or maybe a significant fraction, but he's still going to have lots and lots of supporters. And history is full of this. I mean, people supported Hitler, who was crazy. And the people around him knew he was crazy, but the German people didn't really grasp that.
Well, you know, actually, let's take that Hitler analogy and talk about after the Treaty of Versailles, right? You know, Germany was in disrepair. The whole world had shoved them to the side. And this enigmatic figure stood up and he blamed the Jews.
Right.
Essentially, right? Look at what we're living in today with anti-Semitism, racism. If you go on Fox News or OAN or Newsmax, it's Antifa, it's Black Lives Matters, it's Antifa, it's time and time again. They're trying to create that division and that fear. You know that it's better than boast. People don't vote for people. They vote against people.
Yes, there's a lot of truth to that. I agree with you. There's a lot of truth to that.
So when I look at Trump and whoever the Democrats decide to run, you know, in my opinion, the best person to run would be Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan. I think she kicks ass and she's strong and a brilliant person. And to that point, she's not going to run because she doesn't want it. She's smart.
Well, she may or she may. I mean, she says that right now she's not going to run. But first of all, I think Biden is reelectable if he faces Trump. I mean, he beat him the last time by 7 million votes, and Donald is going to.
But if you know, hey, that is not. But when you say 7 million votes, if you add those swing states, it's 100,000 votes.
No, I agree with you. In the electoral college,
which is all that matters,
which is how Donald got in the first time, is the electoral college. There's a problem, but you know, look at the vote pattern in the states in the Midwest where the Biden administration has been helping to revive manufacturing jobs, has been getting more capital investment. Trump said there was all this new capital investment. Well, I went through the pieces about it, and guess what? There wasn't any increase in capital investment. In fact, each year that Trump was president, the GDP growth went down and down and down, and then it collapsed and went negative in 2020. His job growth that he kept bragging about, I couldn't believe. The New York Times where I used to work, the LA Times where I used to work, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, none of them reported that from the time the economy turned around under Obama until he left, so the last 6 years of his administration, his job growth was 3% higher on average per month than Trump's. And part of the problem is this disconnect from reality, because there are people who just watch Fox, Breitbart, OAN, these mendacious organizations that make stuff up, and when they don't, they twist it into
what was that word? Mendacious? I love that. What does that mean?
Lie.
Lie. Okay.
They lie. I mean, there's so much, there's academic research on Fox all over the place showing how they take something and just pretzel it. They turn it into something it's nowhere near. I think losing the House may actually be a blessing in disguise for the Democrats, because unless something unexpected happens, they're going to spend the next 2 years being obstructionists, pursuing things like Hunter Biden that aren't going to go anywhere, just as Benghazi did not. And it's not going to add any votes for them. It'll reinforce the crazy base, but it's not going to do anything for them to build a broader coalition. And that's how you get elected, through coalitions.
I did a man on the street asking people what at a Trump rally, what was on Hunter's laptop, and nobody knew.
Ask people what Benghazi was, and they don't know.
Well, Hillary Clinton was investigated 3 times by Republicans. Whitewater, Benghazi, and then the emails, and there was nothing there. There was no illegalities. Some of the stuff she shouldn't have done. The private server, Powell and others warned her. Colin Powell.
Except one interesting thing about her private server, Chip, that I think's gotten lost in the news. We know the State Department's email servers were hacked repeatedly by foreign governments.
Right. So in effect, it was actually safer. Yeah.
The FBI said that they had they couldn't find any evidence that her server had been hacked. And when you hack something, you usually leave some kind of a trail that the technical people know how to find. So she may actually have been better off. She wasn't the only one who did it. I mean, Colin Powell, Madeleine Albright, because
Trump's daughter does it. Trump's daughter.
Terrible.
Yeah. Look, obviously, there's no comparison between I forget the name of the Ukrainian company, Bermusa.
You're close.
Something like that.
Burisma.
Yeah, that Hunter Biden worked for. I mean, it's not even close to the comparison of the things Kushner's doing with the Saudis. What Kushner did without a security clearance, conducting arms deals with the Saudis. The Saudis, as you know, bought an entire floor Trump Tower in the past 20 years. I mean, his relationship with them, all that stuff. I guess let's go back to this last thing and just we can end on this note. We'll talk obviously long before the 2024 election.
Yeah.
As we move forward here, I wonder. I look at the Liz Cheneys and the Adam Kinzingers and Joe Walsh, who's going to talk to us in a little bit. And when they stood up against Trump, they were attacked and in some cases politically destroyed. Right. Yeah. To this day, I believe Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger would clean the clock of the Democrats in 2024, but they won't. They're not smart enough to do that, or they don't have the balls to do it, because of this 40 million people who will show up with Confederate flags and violent rhetoric.
Well,
I think they're afraid of them.
Liz Cheney, whose views of the world I don't care for one bit, except she does believe in integrity. And it's an important thing to remember that what we need to focus on are politicians who we can see integrity in. Lots of people go to Washington to do good and they end up doing well. When I started out as a reporter and as a teenager, I knew there was a local politician who had nothing when he'd been elected to the local board of supervisors. And 8 years later, he was pretty darn prosperous. But I didn't know how to prove it that he had done something wrong. That took, a few years of development and practice. But we need to pay attention to people like Liz Cheney who, whether you agree with them or not, they operate on principle. And she, so she didn't get reelected. She's not going to tarnish her reputation over that. This is a problem for the Republicans. Kevin McCarthy has no apparent ideology. Nobody around him can identify, when they're asked, any ideology he has.
Yeah.
Mitch McConnell's ideology is real simple. I want to put judges on courts who will increase the power of corporations and put down activities by people who are Black, lesbian, LGBTQ, critics, unionists, because he wants a dominant white culture with a strong corporatist streak.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think, the thing with Trump is that he hides in plain sight. And he's done it so frequently,
Yeah.
And others can't have a hard time mimicking that because they actually care about their reputations, or, even they could even be bad people, but they're smart enough to know that when you hang it on the laundry line, everyone, it's open to everyone in the world.
Before we go, Chip, let me just tell you that, right-wing radio doesn't have me on anymore, but some sort of more neutral people do. And I get asked all the time. I was asked this on POTUS the other day on Sirius XM. Well, if Donald Trump is a tax crook, as you keep saying, why hasn't he been indicted? And
good question.
The problem with that question is there are 160 million tax returns filed by individuals in this country. How many people were prosecuted for tax fraud last year? The government got about 500 convictions.
Yeah.
And most of those were drug dealers, politicians who took bribes, or people who bribed politicians. There is no serious effort in this country to pursue high-level tax fraud. And I've been writing about that and reading the statistics on who gets audited and who gets prosecuted going back decades. And I'm the guy who got 2 presidents to change their tax policies by reporting the facts.
Yeah,
So,
but I mean, Cy Vance and Letitia James, they've had opportunities and they haven't. We'll see what happens in Georgia. But I believe, and until I'm proven otherwise, and you'll be the guy to do it, that he's still an imminent threat to the security and safety of this nation.
Oh,
David,
he's a great present danger to the country, Chip. Absolutely. I just don't think he'll get back.
DCReport.org, and in your books on Trump are just amazing as well. You can find them all at DCReport.org. David Cay Johnston. Thank you, my friend. Stay well, all right? All right, good to see you, buddy. Bye-bye. All right. Coming up in just a minute, we're going to talk to the director of a film called The Game Is Up that's right to this point, but the exact opposite of what I'm saying. But before that, I want to get a chance here to play you some of the top 10 from Twitter this week, and some of these are scary, and let's just start with Nick Fuentes' rant. This is the one that got, and then I'm going to play Romney's response in our Twitter top 10.
But I would say that the Jews had better start being nice to people like us, because what comes out of this is going to be a lot uglier and a lot worse for them than anything that's being said on this show or has been said on this show.
So this is the guy that Trump met with and had dinner with and claimed that he didn't know. But just for the record, when you go to Mar-a-Lago to have dinner with Trump, you go through a Secret Service screening. It's such a lie. This is Mitt Romney at number 9, his comments on this.
It's disgusting to invite people like that to meet with a former president of the United States. I think it's been clear that there's no bottom to the degree to which President Trump will degrade himself and the nation.
Okay. Of course, that is the only U.S. Republican senator that voted for impeachment in the and not the Benghazi, the January 6th. I think I got that right. Maybe it was not the Benghazi, excuse me, the Ukraine Zelensky influence. This is this is the Daily Show. I don't have time to play the whole thing, but this gives you an idea of what we were talking about with David Cay Johnston just a moment ago about how racism and anti-Semitism and bigotry towards LGBTQ is the winning formula for Republicans.
They say about America, they say diversity is our strength.
How precisely is diversity our strength?
You got to recognize the fact that this is a godless country. I hate it.
You're right. They're godless. That is exactly right. I never talk like that, but it's true.
Black people are violent. They
have chaos and violence in their communities.
Send the military into these black neighborhoods, make the streets safe. They'll complain about it. It doesn't matter.
We should send in the troops if necessary to restore order.
Enough with the Jim Crow stuff. Who cares? Oh, to drink out of a different water fountain. Big fucking deal.
Oh, the legacy of Jim Crow. That was 67 years ago. It is ancient history now.
Russia. Can we give a round of applause for Russia?
And why shouldn't I root for Russia, which I am?
The fundamentals of our worldview, a society where boys and girls get married as teenagers and start having kids.
We need these ladies to get married, and it's time.
Again, these are just the basic roots of how the Republican Party operates today. They nominated an African-American. I don't know if you've seen this meme going around, and I wish I had it to show you right now. If you remember Trading Places, where Eddie Murphy was sitting beside the two brothers, and that there was a similar one where he's sitting in between Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz. It's pretty funny. This is Herschel Walker speaking on our number 6 video top 10.
My neck is too big to be wearing a tie. I'm not wearing a tie, and they know that. But this is what I'm running against. I'm running against this slick preacher that talks so smooth. Y'all saw what he was saying in that debate, trying to think he can out-talk Herschel. And I'm going to secure this border. They said, how are you going to do that? I said, well, I can do it then. You just put up a wall. A wall do work. Wall work around your house. When you got a wall around your house, people don't do it. They can get in, but you know what? They get in, it'll be hard to get out. Because I got a dog that, my dog really won't bite, but he pretty bad anyway.
And I got to be honest with you, it pains me to play these because he's such an ignorant human being. And the fact that he's African-American, but it's important to understand that that's not at play here. What they've done is they ran an African-American against the esteemed Baptist minister and a man who has a long history and a long record of public service. That's what bothers me. This is number 7. This is a clip I wanted you to see.
Herschel Walker's violence has hurt so many people.
He held a gun to my temple and said he was going to blow my brains out.
His son says Walker threatened to kill us and had us move 6 times in 6 months running from his violence. An ex-girlfriend says Walker used threats of violence to force her to have an abortion.
He said I would not be safe and that the child would not be safe.
Herschel Walker doesn't belong in the Senate. Georgia Honor's responsible for the content of this ad.
Obviously, pretty powerful stuff. The numbers, the latest poll I saw had Warnock 6.5, 7 points, I believe it was. But I don't feel comfortable with that, even though the election is coming up. Actually, interestingly, on the election day, which I believe is December 6th, we're going to have Congressman Eric Swalwell on the show, and we'll talk a little bit about that and his views. The last 2 videos for our top 10 today. Actually, I'm not going to play all. I'm going to save a couple a little bit later on so we can get to our next guests. But this gives you an idea of what the Republican Party is about. You remember Kyle Rittenhouse, who in the protest after George Floyd's murder, people came into the street. And of course, Kyle Rittenhouse came in with an AR-15 and pistols and killed innocent bystanders, people that weren't attacking him, regardless of what Fox and others say. So what is Kyle Rittenhouse doing today? Well, watch this.
The Kyle Rittenhouse turkey shoe.
That's right, Kyle. When I saw how these fake news turkeys operated, I had to start coding immediately. Gamers will get to play as Kyle Rittenhouse using a highly specialized laser gun to strike down any turkey that spreads lies, propaganda, or liberal bias.
Each player will battle the fake news through a series of levels that are filled with dangerous turkeys. Everyone will get to see what Kyle has to go through each and every day.
Let me ask you something. What do you think the odds are that Kyle Rittenhouse will be speaking at the 2024 Republican National Convention? Pretty good. This last clip, again, from Twitter Top 10, to me, leads right into our next guest. And the question really is, what is the state of the Republican Party? If the Republican Party were in the hospital, would it be just because they came in to get a skin knee Band-Aid, or are they on life support? This is Mitch McConnell being asked about former President Trump and whether or not, you'll notice at the end, the reporter asks him whether or not he'll support Trump should he run. Listen.
In light of what you said, that there's no room in your party for anyone who harbors these anti-Semitic views, if Donald Trump wins the Republican nomination, would you support him?
Look, let me just say again, there is simply no room in the Republican Party for anti-Semitism or white supremacy. And that would apply to all of the leaders in the party who will be seeking offices.
I don't know who is more ballless, and that Mitch McConnell or Mike Pence. I think you'd have to pull out a magnifying glass. These two, Pence kills me. Pence does these interviews, and I mean this Pence. If you remember on January 6th, the story that Pence would not get in one of the Secret Service cars because he didn't recognize anybody in there. He thought that Trump's people were going to drive away and have him killed. I mean, Cruz, all the other, but Ted Cruz, all Trump did was call his wife a pig. But Mike Pence thought he was going to be murdered that day. And he still can't summon up the courage to stand up for himself, his family, and the Republican Party. It's mind-numbing. I want to show you this right now. This is a new film that's out. It's called, well, it's been out a while, but The Game Is Up. And I think that it's important to understand what this is. And when I say, again, the actual events of this, let me play it here a little bit for you, and just so we can get an idea of what we're talking about. This is, we'll have the director on in just a second. This is a little bit of the promo for this. Let me see. Do I have this up right? I may not. Oh, it jumped to an ad. I apologize. This is live. We'll get to that in just a second. Let me go to the director right now and talk about what has to be, in my opinion, the it's quintessential question: is Trump done, or is he ready for his second round? Joining us right now is the director of that. Let me get a better shot of both of us here. Hi, Melissa. Melissa J Peltier.
Hi, do you hear me? Great.
Yeah, you sound great, Melissa. Thank you so much. First of all, great work on this film.
Thank you.
And
it was a team effort, a lot of people.
Well, to that point, why don't I bring in again the former Congressman Joe Walsh, who is with us here, who was a big part of this, and I want to again, what I really want people to understand about this is, can you hear Joe? You with me?
I'm with you guys.
So tell me in essence, give me the elevator pitch for the film, Melissa. How you came up with the idea, and did it turn out like you expected when you approached it?
That's a good question. What inspired me actually was Joe sitting right there. I, as many people, was dismayed about Trump. Well before he was elected, I really believed he could get elected because I have a real mix of political views in my family. Some of the things I was hearing from people, and as somebody who actually met Trump and sort of worked with him for a short period of time, it was just mind-boggling to me that people believed this whitewashed version of him. But I wanted to do something, and I was so frustrated. I was on Twitter all the time, and that wasn't enough. You just wake up every morning so frustrated. And I thought, I've got this 30-year history of skill set of doing documentary, TV, and film. So what can I do? And while that was going on, I was watching Joe on Twitter. And Joe, when I first, saw Joe, I thought, my God, this is like the farthest right person for me. We have nothing in common. And then it was interesting because in real time on Twitter, Joe changed over a little over a year. And you could see it happening because he was on there a lot. And it was the way that I would have thought that reasonable people would have reacted to Trump. Okay, so he fooled you, whatever. Now, wait a minute. He's punishing Harley Davidson. Why is he doing that? That's like a private company. What's the president doing, punishing a private company just because they didn't do something that I wanted them to do? Wait a minute, Russia. Wait a minute. And every time Joe, it's like he got more and more suspicious of what was going on and more aware that things weren't as they seemed. And I would jump up and kind of encourage him now and then. And, a few other liberals like Molly John Fast would do that, like woke Joe Walsh. But that really inspired me because I thought there's got to be other people like that. There's got to be people who are reasonable people who, for whatever reason, and there's a lot of good reasons people voted for Trump, good reasons the first time, they thought. And what happens? Don't they sit there and see this unfolding? Don't they see what's happening? And I thought, really, actually, the whole Republican Congress would become like Joe. And of course, they didn't. They did the opposite. And that's what inspired me in the first place. And so, by the beginning of 2020, I had no money to do this with. I had no means of doing it. I didn't have a team. I was in New York. But Mary Carey Kramer, who is our producer, who's a wonderful producer, talked me into it. She basically said, build it and they will come. And so we did. So we raised some money.
I don't think most people understand that how a documentary is different than a film, and that you can sit there and draw an arc and a storyboard, but then when you go out and start to shoot it, things can change. Obviously the stories that you get, as you because it's all about storytelling, and a documentary is no different than a regular film in that regard, right?
Absolutely.
But what you've done, and let me see if I can I want to play a little bit of this here if I can, just a second, and so I might have it together here finally, and let me see if I can actually I want this part to come out because I think there's Joe right there, and the New Hampshire primaries in 2020, and let's see if we can hear from him on this. Now, can we jump in here? I just want to jump in here real quick and talk about this part. Because Joe, you were a congressman back in 2013, right? Is that kind of right?
Yeah.
And this evolution from being a conservative, and you still are conservative, right? Yeah.
Proudly, yeah.
Yeah. What was that tipping point that Melissa saw? And you guys can talk about this, because at the heart of this film is about Republicans like Cheney and others, or Romney, coming out and saying, no, I can't take anymore. I can't do this anymore. Two questions. Number one, what was the tipping point? And in both of your opinion, why isn't this happening more? Why aren't we seeing more of this?
First off, Chip, let me just say that Melissa Jo is the greatest thing in the world. It was so awesome to get to know her and to be a part of this film. And everybody, damn it, go get and watch The Game Is Up and write a review. Look, Chip, it's a cult. And I can say that because I got out of the cult. Why haven't people turned and changed yet? The vast majority of Republicans, because they're not supporters, they're followers. And Trump is a cult leader. And it's really, really tough to extract yourself from that. And Melissa and I know we've talked endlessly. Yeah, I belong to the cult. But I was also kind of a facilitator of the cult. I helped to bring other people into the cult. What changed for me? I finally started to pay attention to Trump. I didn't really pay attention to him much before that 2016 election. Once he got elected and I paid attention to him, I realized he goes against every single frickin' thing I believe in. So I pulled myself away.
So there wasn't one thing. It was just one day you just looked in the mirror and said, "Wait a second, what am I doing?" That one of those things?
When he got elected, after he got elected, and he started spewing stuff about Russia, I remember a week after he was sworn in, I came home from my radio show. Remember, I'm on the radio, 100 stations across the country. I came home that night and I said to my wife, Helene, this isn't going to end well for me. I'm going to end up not supporting him, and that's not going to end well for my career. And so then it built over a year or so. The final straw for me was Helsinki, the summer of 2018, where he said, I'm with Putin and not my own people. I went on my radio show that night and I said, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure he's not reelected. And then I began to lose my radio show and everything else.
What were the attacks like? Obviously personal and threats on your life, all those things, right?
Besides those, the personal and the death threats and all of that, once you do that, once you publicly, and I was a well-known conservative, once you publicly come out against Trump, you're done. Your life changes. You lose your job, you lose your livelihood, and you lose any future you have in the Republican Party, which had been my home for 30 some years. Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, friends are experiencing that now. You're done.
Yeah. So Melissa, the conclusion that I get from the film is that the Sisyphus finally reached the top, and the stone is on the other side, and that Trump is a done figure. You might have. I noticed you were in the green room when I was talking to David Cay Johnston, and I don't feel that way, and I know that Joe doesn't feel that way. That Trump is still a viable threat to this nation. What are your thoughts after this documentary?
I think he's a threat. I think he's a threat because I think that Trumpism is a threat, and I don't think Trumpism has any relation to democracy or to what our founders wanted whatsoever. It's authoritarianism, and it's, as Joe just did a little video on it for Courier, I think, which was excellent, by the way. Which is that, people can't really grasp the idea of losing democracy because we've always had democracy. As bad as things have been when they've been bad, we've always had the capability to vote our way back, to legislate our way back. If we go too far, we can bring it back. Well, if we don't have democracy, that doesn't happen. We go as far as the autocrat wants us to go in whatever direction. And if you look at what's happening in Russia right now, do you think all those Russian guys who are being pulled out of their houses and thrown on the front line as cannon fodder, you think they supported Putin? Of course they've supported him. Does he care about them? No. An autocrat never cares. They never care about the people. They care about themselves and holding on to power. And unfortunately, I think Joe's former party has become all about holding on to power, not changing anything, not even legislating, really, just holding on to power. And that's,
what did you learn?
To me, it's really scary.
Melissa, what did you learn the most from the, and I'm going to ask you this too, Joe, from it's called The Game Is Up. The director's with us right now, Melissa J Peltier and Joe Walsh, former presidential candidate and congressman and a Trump supporter, and now one of the strongest figures against Trump. What did you guys learn over the last couple years of this? Was it that because I to be honest with you, I really thought Trump would fade quicker. I thought people would come to that realization, and then I realized, no. What was your takeaway from the, what did this film took you a couple years from the first?
Yeah, right? I wanted to get it done by the 2020 elections before that. And we were able to get Joe's piece done before that and Bacha Goldberg's piece done right before the election. But we weren't able to finish it. And the reason is I couldn't get anyone to fund it. I mean, we raised money ourselves, grassroots, through a PAC that we formed and we've dissolved at this point. But we raised some money, but actually the rest of it came out of my savings account, which is now empty. So, but it was, it was ride or die. Failure was not an option, and it was finish it. And so we did finish it in, like, I'd say early spring 2021, mid-spring. And then we started going on the festival circuit looking for a distributor. And of course, that was even harder than I thought it was going to be, because it's a good film. I mean, just no, I'm not going to,
it's not only
a good solid film.
The content is not only there, but it's so well done. And again, as I mentioned before, documentaries are especially difficult because you're going to shoot 10 times the footage you need. And then, you spend the time in an editing room, putting it together and trying to get.
In lockdown, by the way, we did this all virtually. Everything was virtual.
Joe, I
didn't meet Joe until, when did I meet you, Joe? The first time? Oh, I met you in New Hampshire. That's right. Before lockdown. Yeah, because we shot Joe before the lockdown. We shot Joe in New Hampshire. He was campaigning in Iowa and New Hampshire. And then we were getting ready to go on our to Chicago and to Ohio. And then everything locked down. So,
and Joe, you were Liz Cheney before Liz Cheney. And it's true. I mean, you took the brunt of this early on. And I'm glad now that there are others, not many, but there are more.
Well, Chip, think about what you just said. And we all have immense respect for Liz Cheney. But after 4 years of Donald Trump in the White House, Liz Cheney
voted with him,
campaigned her butt off for Trump's reelection.
Yeah.
And it was only the insurrection that moved her and Adam Kinzinger. To quickly answer your question, Trump is still a threat because he's running for president. He's still the leader of one of our two major political parties. And until proven otherwise, he's the odds-on favorite to be the Republican nominee.
Well, and that's I can't even begin to tell you my fear that a Republican Senate and House and Trump in the White House and what that would mean with a 63 SCOTUS could be the end. Melissa, thank you so much. Great work.
Sure.
The movie is called The Game Is Up. Find it everywhere. Go on Amazon, get it, pay a little bit. And help support.
YouTube with ads. It's on YouTube with ads, and it's also on Tubi with ads. But you can see it ad free and beautiful HD on Amazon, and you can
get it.
Watch
it. Write a review. Melissa, Joe, you are the best.
Oh no, Joe's the best. Melissa's my favorite conservative.
I don't want to get into a fight, Melissa. You're the best.
All right, goodbye. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much for being here, guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Again, Melissa J Peltier and former Congressman, former presidential candidate Joe Walsh joining us right now. I'm sorry they're in here so late. My two other favorite people here. This is Mark Thompson, whose show kicks off in about 5 minutes, and Nikki Maduro, whose show is at 12. These are all Pacific times. Thank you, guys. Mark, what's going on today,
glad
big
you
guy?
guys. I'm glad somebody mentioned the reality about Cheney. I mean, I love this love affair that you know, how everybody just rolls over for the Republicans who turn on Donald Trump. I mean, here, so you need somebody as toxic as Donald Trump for all of a sudden us to, you know, fall in love and start dating Dick Cheney and Kinzinger. It's absolutely loathsome. It's sick. The Democrats have got to get their head on straight. Now I sound like Chip with the crazy, you know, and the F word and everything else you do, Chip. It's nutty.
Hey, what do you mean F word?
Well, I've seen your videos. Don't try to deny it. You're an F-bomb spitting angry guy, and I love it.
I love Here's what I have to say to you right here.
Well, let me think about that.
All right, now we'll begin.
In that video, he goes.
I
on
love
those
that
talk
video.
Shows and farts. Nielsen used to bring a fart machine.
Yep.
Oh my God. I
He
was
was
going to
so
play
great.
that tomorrow. We're going to have top 10 fun videos on Twitter. But what do you got? So what do you got going on here, Mark? In about 3 minutes.
Major fail in the San Francisco. This is the world of the city is filled with this kind of thing. Spend a lot of money. Prototypes for the self-cleaning, never fail toilet. You know, can take a beating, but it'll, you know, keep on seeding, I guess might be the way, might be the rhyme. Anyway, it failed, of course, within a week. So we'll talk about that. Also, U.S. Soccer doing well. I've got some Herschel Walker, another revelation out of the Herschel Walker camp. Spencer Christian, who is longtime television personality, weather guy in the Bay Area. We'll talk about this incoming weather system. It's going to affect Lake Tahoe and much of northern Central California. I have to say,
I hope, right? Lots of snow.
yeah, lots of snow, but there are attendant problems with the snow. But yeah, the snow is great, and snowpack is important. I mentioned USA men's soccer. I have a major announcement on the show as well. I've got a major poll going on. I'm looking at the show. I've looked it over. It is, Chip, I can say it. It is a big show. It's a big show, and it starts
Major announcement.
in just a minute. Yeah, major announcement. So, I love Nikki too. She always looks so bright and sunny and fabulous. I know there's a lot going on in your life. I watched your show yesterday, but
All right, go
Chip,
get prepared for your show. Get
See
out
you,
of
buddy. Thank you so much. See you.
All right, Nikki Maduro show.
Hi.
Hello. This is, by the way, this is Mark's big announcement. I can't believe he was at the airport. That guy.
Oh, you're terrible.
Anyway,
You're
what do you
terrible.
got going on?
We're going to start with the Respect for Marriage Act. You know, it does a lot, but it doesn't do enough for everybody, in my opinion. And so we'll get into that a little bit.
The Republicans voted against it. So.
Well, 12 Republicans voted for it, which does matter. I know. I mean, so at least it wasn't all of them, right? But there were some concessions that were made, and it leaves a lot of Americans out. Honestly, it's coming down to we're not a United States of America anymore. It matters where you live on whether or not you have certain rights, and that's not.
Mind your own freaking business, I tell people.
I know.
Right?
It's so annoying.
Jesus. Yeah.
It's awful. And then we'll talk about those empty lots in Southern California. You have to be really rich to buy prime real estate and then not put a damn thing on it. So we'll talk about that. PETA, upset at the National Dog Show. And is Will Smith getting a pass because he's black? And so that's all coming up on the show.
Yeah, I'm tired of Will Smith. He still has not done what I think. The same thing with like Louis C.K. We've talked about this. Haven't heard real apologies from these guys.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, so we'll
Not
get into
real.
that. Yeah.
No, they always nuanced apologies. I screwed up. Just say that.
I mean, I think that Will Smith did, but it seemed very scripted and
that's what I mean.
and all those sorts of things. But did you ever see his thing on YouTube Red? Will Smith has a documentary that happened before the slap. I watched it when I had COVID. It's pretty good, and I think it may explain a lot of things, but I don't know about getting a pass. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I bought tickets. I'm going to go see Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle.
So am I. Where are you seeing him?
Down here, though.
Oh,
Not up there. Yeah.
bummer. Well, we're going on the 10th, I think.
That'll
so.
be fun.
That's
All
gonna be
right,
fun.
get out of here.
All
By
right,
the way,
thanks,
the
Jeff.
Commanders are going to beat the 49ers. We're going to
No,
have to
they're
have a
not.
bet when we get
You're
to
going to
it.
start crying. You're crying.
Yeah, all right.
It's okay.
Goodbye. Good
Go
luck.
Niners. Go
Nikki Maduro
Niners.
show starts at 12 o'clock. All right. Again, I want to thank Steve Moskowitz and his wonderful people at Moskowitz LLP. They, of course, sponsor not only this show, but Nikki's and Mark's as well. And tell you what, if you have any kind of question about taxes ever, they're the people to go to. They are the very best, and they will be there for you whenever you need them. Again, 888-TAX-DEAL, 888-TAX-DEAL, MoskowitzLLP.com. All right, that's it for today. Tomorrow on the show, Malcolm Nance will join us, and Dr. Eric Ding will join us as well, and we'll talk about the latest on COVID and sperm reduction. Yeah, one of the long things. It's damaging men's sperm. Sorry, like we needed more bad news. Anyway, I'm Chip Franklin. Again, follow me, please. Subscribe. Here, I say follow, but subscribe. Hit the bell on here as well. And tell people about this every day, 9 o'clock. And we'll see you guys again tomorrow. Be safe. Be real. Till then.
We shall overcome. Yes, we can.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV.
What the fuck is wrong with you?